The storm over Port Charles arrived without warning. Rain hammered the windows of the Metro Court as thunder rolled across the city like an omen. Inside the restaurant, conversation slowed every time lightning flashed across the harbor. Something about the night felt wrong, dangerous, as if the entire city was holding its breath. And somewhere far from the warmth of the Metro Court, Willow Corinthos stood in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse with blood on her hands and terror in her eyes. Everything had changed in a single moment, because Sidwell was dead and Willow was the one who killed him. But the worst part? She didn't regret it. Not after what Sidwell was about to do to Drew. Not after the nightmare she had just survived. Hours earlier, Willow never imagined her life would spiral into violence. She had spent the entire day trying to convince herself that Drew could still be saved, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Despite everything happening around them, despite the enemies closing in, Willow still believed there was good left in Drew Kane. But Sidwell had other plans. The moment Drew disappeared that evening, Willow knew something was wrong. He hadn't answered his phone. He missed 2 meetings. And Curtis revealed that someone had seen Drew being forced into a black SUV near Pier 55. That was when panic truly set in. Willow rushed to the Quartermain mansion, hoping Jason might know something. Instead, she found Carly and Jason in the middle of a tense argument. "Sidwell took him," Jason said grimly. Willow froze. "No," she whispered. "No, why would Sidwell take Drew?" Jason looked at her carefully before answering. "Because Drew knows something." Carly crossed her arms tightly. "And because Sidwell thinks Drew betrayed him." The room fell silent. Willow's heart pounded violently. She knew Sidwell's reputation. Everyone in Port Charles did. The man destroyed lives without hesitation. If Drew truly had information that could expose him, then Drew wasn't being kidnapped for leverage. He was being kidnapped to die. Willow immediately insisted on going with Jason to rescue him. Jason refused. "It's too dangerous." "I don't care." "You should," Jason snapped. "Sidwell kills people for sport." But Willow stood her ground. "You don't understand," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I can't lose him." Jason noticed something in Willow's expression then. Something deeper than fear. Something desperate. It reminded him of Sam years ago, when love blurred the line between bravery and recklessness. After a long silence, Jason finally nodded. "Fine, but you stay behind me." An hour later, they tracked Sidwell's location to an abandoned shipping warehouse near the docks. The building looked dead from the outside. No lights, no movement. But Jason immediately spotted armed guards positioned near the loading entrance. "It's a trap," he muttered. Willow swallowed hard. "Drew's inside." Jason checked his weapon before turning to her. "If anything goes wrong, you run." Willow nodded nervously, but deep down, she already knew she wasn't leaving without Drew. Inside the warehouse, Drew was tied to a steel chair beneath a hanging industrial lamp. Blood dripped from a cut near his temple. One of his eyes was swollen nearly shut. Sidwell stood in front of him calmly, almost casually, sipping whiskey from a crystal glass. "You disappoint me, Drew," Sidwell said coldly. Drew glared at him through the pain. "Go to hell," Sidwell smirked. "That's the problem with heroes. You always think pain makes you noble." He stepped closer. "But pain only makes people weak." Drew struggled against the restraints. "You're finished." Sidwell laughed quietly. "No, you are." Then his face darkened. "You should have stayed loyal." Drew suddenly realized the horrifying truth. Sidwell believed someone inside his organization had leaked information to the authorities. And he blamed Drew for it. "You're making a mistake," Drew warned. Sidwell tilted his head. "Am I?" He nodded toward one of his men. The guard approached holding a pistol. Drew's breathing slowed. This was it. Outside, Jason silently eliminated 2 guards while Willow stayed hidden behind crates near the entrance. Every gunshot echoed through the storm outside, but then another guard spotted Willow. "Someone's here!" Everything exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted through the warehouse. Jason returned fire instantly. Willow screamed and ducked behind metal containers as bullets tore through the darkness. Inside the main room, Sidwell immediately realized they had been found. His expression became murderous. "Kill Drew now." The armed guard raised the gun toward Drew's head, but before he could pull the trigger, Jason burst through the side entrance firing. The bullet hit the guard in the shoulder. Drew fell sideways with the chair crashing against the floor. Sidwell roared with fury. "Kill them!" More gunmen emerged from the shadows. Jason fought with terrifying precision, but there were too many enemies. Willow crawled across the floor, desperately trying to reach Drew. The entire warehouse became a battlefield. Bullets shattered glass, metal screamed from ricochets, smoke filled the air. Then Willow finally reached Drew. "Willow," he gasped weakly. She immediately began cutting the ropes binding his wrists. "We're getting out of here." But before she could free him completely, a cold voice stopped her. "Don't move." Willow froze. Sidwell stood only a few feet away, pointing a gun directly at her chest. Jason was trapped behind heavy gunfire on the opposite side of the warehouse. No one could reach her in time. Sidwell smiled darkly. "Well, this changes things." Drew struggled violently. "Leave her alone." Sidwell ignored him completely. His eyes stayed fixed on Willow. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "I didn't think you'd come." Willow's hands trembled. "Please." Sidwell crouched slightly closer. "You know what's fascinating about people like you, Willow?" he asked softly. "You pretend to be kind, pure, moral." His expression hardened instantly. "But when someone you love is threatened, you become monsters." Willow shook her head. "No." Sidwell smiled again. "Yes." He pressed the gun against Drew's head. "Now here's your choice." Willow stopped breathing. Sidwell's voice became chillingly calm. "I kill Drew." Drew glared at him hatefully. "Or," Sidwell continued, "you kill someone for me." Willow stared at him in horror. "What?" Sidwell pointed toward one of his wounded guards lying nearby. "Pick up the gun," he ordered. "Prove how far you'll go to save him." Tears filled Willow's eyes. "I can't." "Yes, you can," Drew shouted immediately. "Don't do it." Sidwell cocked the gun against Drew's skull. Last chance. Willow felt completely trapped. Every instinct inside her screamed that this was wrong. But Drew was going to die. She could see it in Sidwell's eyes. He meant every word. Slowly, Willow reached for the fallen gun near her feet. Drew shook his head desperately. "No. Willow, don't." Sidwell grinned. "There it is." Willow picked up the weapon with trembling hands. The wounded guard looked terrified. "Please." Willow's entire body shook violently. She couldn't do this. She wasn't a killer. She was a nurse, a mother, a woman who spent her life trying to heal people. But Sidwell laughed softly. "You see," he whispered to Drew, "everyone breaks eventually." Then something changed. Willow looked into Drew's eyes. Not fear, not weakness, trust. He trusted her. And suddenly Willow realized something horrifying. Sidwell would never let either of them leave alive. This wasn't a test, it was entertainment. Sidwell wanted to destroy their souls before killing them. And in that moment, Willow understood there was only one way this ended. Her breathing slowed, her tears stopped. Sidwell noticed the change immediately. "What are you doing?" he asked carefully. Willow slowly stood. Then she turned the gun, directly toward Sidwell. For the first time all night, Sidwell looked surprised. "You're making a mistake," he warned. Willow's voice cracked with emotion. "No," she whispered. "You did." Sidwell fired first. The gunshot exploded through the warehouse. Willow instinctively ducked. The bullet grazed her shoulder. Drew screamed her name. Then Willow pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times. Sidwell staggered backward in shock. Blood spread across his chest. His gun slipped from his hand. And then he collapsed onto the concrete floor. Dead. The warehouse became silent. Even the gunfire in the distance seemed to stop. Willow stood frozen, staring at Sidwell's body. She had killed a man. Jason rushed over seconds later after eliminating the remaining guards. He immediately checked Sidwell's pulse. Nothing. Jason slowly looked up at Willow. Neither of them spoke. Drew finally freed himself from the broken chair and stumbled toward Willow despite his injuries. She dropped the gun instantly. "Oh my God," she whispered. Drew grabbed her before she collapsed. "You saved me." But Willow looked horrified. "I killed him." Drew held her tightly. "You saved my life." Outside, police sirens began approaching rapidly. Jason's expression darkened. "We need to move now." But Willow couldn't stop staring at Sidwell's body. The reality was crushing her. Everything in her life had changed forever. Back at the safe house, Carly treated Willow's shoulder wound while Drew sat nearby watching her carefully. No one knew what to say. The silence became unbearable. Finally, Willow spoke. "I can still hear the gunshots." Carly looked at her sympathetically. "You did what you had to do." Willow immediately shook her head. "No, you don't understand. I looked at him, and I wanted him dead." That confession stunned the room. Drew slowly stood. "Willow, I meant it," she whispered. For 1 second, I wasn't scared anymore. Tears rolled down her face. "I hated him for what he was doing to you." Drew approached carefully. "That doesn't make you evil. But it changes me." Jason quietly looked away because he understood exactly what Willow meant. Taking a life always changed a person. No exceptions. Meanwhile, across Port Charles, news of Sidwell's death spread rapidly through the criminal underworld. Fear followed immediately, because Sidwell's empire wouldn't disappear quietly, and someone would want revenge. At the PCPD, Anna Devane received confirmation that Sidwell was dead just before midnight. Her expression turned grim. "This city is about to explode," she muttered. Detective Chase frowned. "What do you mean?" Anna looked toward the evidence board filled with photos connected to Sidwell's organization. "He kept dangerous people under control. Now they'll start tearing each other apart." But there was another problem. Ballistics would eventually identify the weapon used to kill Sidwell. And once they did, Willow could face murder charges. The next morning, Willow sat alone at the Quartermain boathouse, unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sidwell collapsing again. She heard the shots. She felt the gun in her hands. And worst of all, part of her believed she would do it again. Drew eventually found her sitting near the water. "You disappeared," he said softly. Willow didn't look at him. "You should stay away from me." Drew frowned immediately. "Why would you say that?" "Because I killed someone." "You saved me." Willow finally turned toward him with tears in her eyes. "What happens if that becomes easier next time?" Drew's face fell. "There won't be a next time." "But what if there is?" she whispered. "What if this darkness stays inside me?" Drew slowly sat beside her. "You know what I see when I look at you?" Willow shook her head. A woman who refused to let evil win. She looked unconvinced. Drew continued carefully. "Sidwell tortured people, destroyed families, murdered innocent lives. He would have killed both of us." Willow lowered her eyes. "But I still crossed a line." Drew gently took her hand. "Maybe. But sometimes survival changes the rules." Before Willow could respond, Jason suddenly arrived with urgent news. "We have a problem." Drew immediately stood. "What happened?" Jason's expression turned serious. "Sidwell kept files on everyone." Willow felt sick instantly, and those files are missing. The implications were terrifying. Someone had already started taking over Sidwell's operation, and whoever it was knew exactly how Sidwell died. Jason looked directly at Willow. "You need to understand something. Sidwell had loyal soldiers everywhere." Willow's pulse quickened. "They'll come after me." Jason nodded once. "Yes." That single word changed everything again. Suddenly, Willow realized Sidwell's death wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was only the beginning. Days later, Port Charles remained on edge. Rumors spread constantly. Some claimed Sidwell's death was a gang execution. Others believed Jason Morgan was responsible. But eventually, whispers about Willow began surfacing. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. At General Hospital, Willow noticed nurses staring at her differently. Conversation stopped whenever she entered a room. Fear slowly consumed her. Then things got worse. A black envelope appeared in her locker. No return address, no name. Inside was a single photograph. Sidwell's body lying on the warehouse floor. Across the picture were 4 handwritten words. "You're next, Willow." Her blood ran cold. Later that night, Willow finally broke down completely in front of Drew. "They're never going to stop," she cried. Drew held her tightly. "I won't let anything happen to you. But people die around you constantly," she shouted suddenly. The words stunned both of them. Willow immediately regretted saying it. Drew stepped back slowly, pain flashing across his face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but Drew looked devastated. "Maybe you're right." Willow shook her head desperately. "No. Look at what happened to you because of me." His voice cracked with guilt. "You had to kill someone." Willow approached him carefully. "I did that because I love you." Drew closed his eyes emotionally. Those words changed everything between them, because for the first time, Willow finally admitted the truth neither of them could ignore anymore. She loved Drew enough to become someone she never thought she could be, and that terrified her. Meanwhile, Carly became increasingly worried about Willow's mental state. She privately confronted Jason at the coffee warehouse. "She's spiraling." Jason nodded grimly. "She's in shock." "No," Carly argued. "It's deeper than that." Jason stayed silent. Carly lowered her voice. "She keeps asking if killing Sidwell made her stronger." Jason's expression hardened immediately. "That's dangerous." Because he knew firsthand how violence could slowly reshape a person. And once someone discovered power through survival, sometimes they never came back from it. 1 week later, Willow received another threat. This time, someone smashed the windows of her car outside General Hospital. A message was carved into the hood. Sidwell deserved revenge. Anna immediately assigned extra police protection, but Willow no longer felt safe anywhere. The pressure became unbearable. Then came the final breaking point. Late one evening, Willow returned home and found one of Sidwell's former men inside her living room, waiting. The masked intruder grabbed her before she could scream. "You should have let Sidwell kill Drew," he hissed violently. Willow struggled desperately. The man raised a knife. But suddenly Drew burst through the door. A brutal fight erupted instantly. Furniture shattered, glass exploded. The attacker slashed Drew across the ribs before Drew finally overpowered him. Police arrived minutes later, but the damage was done. As paramedics treated Drew's wound, Willow sat trembling uncontrollably nearby. This would never end, not unless every part of Sidwell's organization was destroyed. That night, Willow made a decision that shocked everyone. She went to Jason. "I want to help you take them down." Jason stared at her carefully. "No, I'm serious. You're grieving and angry." "I'm awake," Willow snapped. "For the first time, I see how this world really works." Jason crossed his arms. "This world destroys people." Willow looked him directly in the eyes. "It already destroyed me." Jason didn't have an answer for that, because maybe she was right. Weeks later, Port Charles would still be reeling from Sidwell's death, but the woman standing in the center of the storm was no longer the same gentle soul everyone once knew. Willow had crossed a line for love. She had pulled the trigger to save Drew, and while part of her still mourned the person she used to be, another part understood something dangerous now. Sometimes survival required darkness. And once darkness saved someone you loved, it became very difficult to fear it anymore. In the final moments of the week, Willow stood alone at Sidwell's grave under cold rain. No one knew she was there. She stared silently at the headstone for a long moment before finally speaking. "You should have stayed away from us." Thunder echoed overhead. Then Willow turned and walked away without looking back. But hidden in the distance, someone watched her carefully from a black car. A mysterious figure picked up a phone. Sidwell was right, the voice said quietly. A dangerous pause followed. Willow is becoming exactly what we need. The call ended, and somewhere deep in Port Charles, a far more terrifying game had just begun.